Every story of freedom begins in darkness, not in triumph, not in certainty, but in a moment when hope feels almost gone. In ancient Egypt, a people waited behind closed doors, their breath held in silence, their lives marked by fear. Outside, judgment moved through the land. Inside, there was only one sign: blood on the doorpost. That night would divide history, but it was not the end. It was only the beginning of a story that would echo through centuries, all the way to a cross. For 400 years, the people of Israel lived as slaves. They built cities they would never own. They served a king who saw them not as human, but as tools. Their cries rose from the dust, unheard by men, but not forgotten by God. Scripture says something simple, yet powerful. God heard them. And when God hears, silence never lasts forever. What seemed like abandonment was only the waiting before intervention. In the midst of oppression, a child was born under a sentence of death. Hidden by his mother, placed in a basket and set upon the waters of the Nile, his life seemed fragile, uncertain. Yet he was found by the daughter of Pharaoh himself, raised in the house of the enemy, educated in power and language, prepared without knowing it. This child would one day stand before kings. His name was Moses, drawn from water, chosen for fire. Years passed. Moses fled into the wilderness, leaving behind power, identity, and purpose. But in the silence of the desert, something extraordinary happened. A bush burned, yet was not killed. From the fire, a voice called his name, not a distant God, but the God of his fathers. I have seen their suffering. I have heard their cries. And with those words, history began to move again. The forgotten would be remembered. The enslaved would be set free. Moses returned to Egypt with nothing but a message: let my people go. But Pharaoh refused, and so the land itself became a battlefield. Waters turned to blood. Darkness swallowed cities. The gods of Egypt fell, one by one. Yet in the land of Goshen, where Israel lived, there was protection. A quiet distinction between judgment and mercy. God was not acting blindly. He was drawing a line. Then came the final night. Each family was commanded to take a lamb, spotless, without defect. It was to be kept, examined, and then sacrificed at twilight. Its blood placed upon the doorposts. This was not ritual for ritual's sake. It was a declaration. Life would stand where blood had spoken, not strength, not goodness, not worthiness. Only the blood would cause judgment to pass over. Inside those homes, the people ate in haste, sandals on their feet, staff in their hands, bread without leaven, bitter herbs on their tongues. Everything about the meal spoke of urgency and memory. They ate as travelers, even before the journey began. Faith was not a feeling that night. It was action, a posture of readiness, before deliverance had even arrived. That night, Egypt broke. A cry rose from every house. But in Israel, there was silence. The difference was not power, not position, but a mark: blood on a door. And so, after 4 centuries, the impossible happened. The slaves walked free. A nation was born in a single night. Yet that moment was only a shadow of something greater still to come. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Prophets spoke in fragments of a servant pierced and silent, like a lamb led to slaughter. Then one spring in Jerusalem, a man sat at a Passover table. He took bread and said, "This is my body." He took a cup and said, "This is my blood." The symbols were no longer symbols. The story had reached its turning point. The next day, as lambs were sacrificed in the temple, he was lifted on a cross. His bones were not broken. His blood was poured out. And at the very moment he died, the veil of the temple tore in two. The barrier between God and man was gone. The Passover was no longer just remembered, it was fulfilled. Then, on the 3rd day, at dawn, the tomb was empty. The lamb was no longer slain, but alive. What began in Egypt had reached beyond history itself. Death had passed over once. Now it had been defeated entirely, and the promise extended beyond one nation to all who would believe. The story's not finished. It never was. Every year, a table is set, bread is broken, a cup is lifted, and somewhere, hearts still wait for the final redemption. Because the Lamb is no longer on the altar, but at the center of eternity, and one day, every exile will come home.